Darren Rovell for Collect TV here with collector Patrick Ryan. And Patrick, today we're talking about game used jerseys, game used items as Sotheby's announces that they have for sale, consigned to them, Kobe Bryant's regular season debut and Michael Jordan's preseason debut, his pro debut jersey, and with estimates that who knows, millions and millions and millions of dollars when frankly, they last sold for, hundreds of thousands, less than hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I want to just take me through where game used jerseys have been. I remember when you bid at the National in Chicago. I want to say it was 2021.
No, it was 18.
Oh, it was 18. So
Yeah.
in 2018, you were there. You bid a hundred and something on a Jordan, right? What
100, I won it for 137. So it was a second round playoff jersey from the Last Dance season. Yeah.
Right. And at the time, I thought you were freaking out of your mind. Out of your mind. Like, I thought maybe it was a $60,000 jersey, and maybe in that moment it was. But if you look at where game use has gone versus cards and other things in the space, it has pretty much only gone up from there. So how do you evaluate this market? Why has game used gone from something where it was more when it was a small piece of a card versus the actual jersey? And people always said, oh, jerseys are too big. It has to be in this portable space. And now all of a sudden it's just on the rise for 8 straight years.
Sure. I think there's two main factors. One being related to cards. So, we saw a Justin Herbert 1 of 1 shield patch rookie sell for I think like $1.8 million. And the patch was from a non-game used off the rack. Not even Justin Herbert didn't even put the jersey on. And so I think, so obviously there's been some course correction on that stuff. But I think that kind of opened people's eyes to the idea of, if we're spending money for these, small pictures with fake relics on it, what is a real relic worth? Right. So I think that just kind of due to the growth of sports cards, but then also people inserting some personal logic into the equation, it just started making a little bit more sense to diversify and invest in the actual game used pieces themselves. Look, cards are always going to be king, but it did feel like there was just some balancing out that needed to happen. The other reason that I attribute it to is people becoming comfortable displaying these items. So I think, and also kind of moving out from this niche collector to being like someone like, well, I collect Allen Iverson cards. Maybe I want one central Allen Iverson item. And guess what that would be? That would be a game used jersey. And, what's also fun is people buy a game used jersey from one of his later years and they upgrade and upgrade. And eventually they're holding a rookie year or that crossover game jersey. So I think it presents itself as a nice central piece to a collection. And people have gotten comfortable with that idea.
And obviously, the massive return on some of these things that we hear, something that goes for 100,000, turns into, the Kobe Bryant pop jersey. Obviously, photo matching, that thing goes for $5 million and is matched to so many games. And then obviously the Jordan jersey going for $10.1 million from The Last Dance. So certainly headlines have gotten just a ton of attention. How much do you think that plays into things?
Well, I think that definitely there's some momentum in the space, but we are also seeing people kind of exit key pieces, right? So the person who's that $10 million Jordan jersey, I think it could do 20 or 25 today, and it wasn't even sold that long ago. But I think the person who bought it was in it for low six figures, right? And so sometimes it's, look, I 10x this or I 20x this, and they want to buy a beach house, right? So sometimes it's just relative to what you have in it. You can't justify keeping it. And what I tell people with any category of collectibles, if you're not selling something at the current market, you're actually buying it. You're making the decision to buy it again and again and again and again. And I will say that I think that some people in the jersey space, that point that I mentioned earlier, they do like upgrading and trading in and out. And there are clear upgrades in the jersey game.
So this doesn't speak to a lack of faith of the people or person that has these items that are now selling them.
No, not at all. I mean, also, like, we don't know who's selling them. It's not me, for full disclosure. Those are not my jerseys, but like, you just don't know where they are in their collectible jersey, right? Like, their collectible journey. They might be making a run for a Hannes Wagner. They might be making a run for a Picasso. They might be making a run for a Shelby, 1956 car or whatever, right? Like, they might be going after Spider-Man. You never know why someone needs liquidity, or like, they're just like, this is stupid to have in my house if it's worth 400x what I paid, and it's worth, $8 million or whatever that Kobe's going to go for.
How would you say you've cycled in and out of jerseys? Obviously, you have a lot more cards, but as a percentage, it seems like you've really held on to your jerseys more. Is that accurate?
Well, you're actually going to see a couple hit the block, for a handful of reasons, and a lot of it's just liquidity and upgrading into certain things. I've bought a couple more Jordans that have hit the market from the 1998 Last Dance season, and so I've got to sell a couple things. And so for example, like, I'm selling a Luka Doncic jersey that I really like. I'm selling it because I bought one of his finals jerseys. So there's sort of like an evolutionary scale where I definitely think a lot of people would put a debut jersey, like, that's probably top three of someone's jerseys for certain collectors. A jersey worn during actual winning of a championship, that's certainly top three. A jersey worn just in a finals or a key playoff game, that's up there. But, and like, look, I will say that, there's some entry paths that are pretty. So I will say the other thing is, to be perfectly fair, some of the more, not knocking this guy, but Devin Booker scoring 18 points in a loss on a random February, that market's down. And that market's down because these guys are wearing two jerseys a game. These guys are keeping everything, right? So, like, while generally directionally this market's moving up, there has been some price depreciation. But I think that price depreciation is actually what's helped spur it. Is because people are like, oh, I can buy a Devin Booker gamer for $4,000, which is like what his Prism Silver PSA 10 used to sell for. I have this whole jersey.
Get someone into the game. Get someone into the game.
They get into the game, and then they're looking to upgrade or add. And so like, the price is coming down on like the lower tier jerseys, I think's actually spurned some of the activity at the top.
One of the things we have to do as collectors is see how many people are in our market, right? Because markets die or slow down when there are too few people in the market, or the wrong demos in the market and they can't hold on. So, what do you think the demo is in game used? Obviously, you think there's a lower end that's been able to get into the game. The higher end, are people actively rushing in or coming into the game used market? And is that one of the reasons why we've seen a lot of growth at the top?
Yeah, so some bad news, some good news. The bad news is it's still a pretty small circle, certainly relative to high end cards. Now, I do think some of the growth is some card guys diversifying a little bit, but the good news with the game used jersey market is that we've talked about, family offices and investment funds getting into collectibles more seriously, and people call cards their art. The best comparison in memorabilia, the memorabilia world to art, are game used jerseys, because all real art is one of one. All these game jerseys are one of ones. And so the good news is, if we were going to see outside whales coming into sports memorabilia, this is where they're coming. And that I'm very confident in. And so I do think that we're going to continue to see some really good activity around the higher end game used market. It's why I now own three 1998 Last Dance playoff. Again, they're not finals. It's why I have three of them. And I look, I'm not going to die with three of them. One will for sure stay with me. But yeah, so I made a couple pretty big bets within the last 4 months, personally.
When you compare in this situation a Kobe regular season versus a Jordan preseason, listen, we did a bunch of work, and you can look into tickets. Both you and I are in tickets. Preseason debuts versus regular season debuts, depending on what you're looking at, they sell for 6 to 20 times less. But there's a little different situation here. You have Jordan, where obviously, it looks like this jersey was worn maybe the entire preseason. It's the script Chicago, which was only worn for that year. It's Jordan. versus Kobe, regular season matters. Played a couple minutes, didn't score, but I don't think people care there. When you compare the two, which one would you rather have at the price that you think it's going to go for, and what do you think these go for?
Well, both.
Yeah.
But having to make some decisions. I do think that the okay, in the comparison of pro debut versus NBA debut, right? Like in the ticket world, the reason we had that delineation is because there are samples of both. Here, we actually don't have the
Correct.
comps. We're not sure they're going to emerge, right? So I think the pro debut for Jordan is actually kind of enticing. Even though it was the preseason, it really is like the start of the journey. So look, but again, of course, Kobe's first ever jersey is sort of a crazy piece too. Now, look, for those that might see this, that might not have a lot of experience, this is the market that requires the most research. Not all photo matches are created equally. We'll have disputing photo match results from the most respected names in the business. So with these two jerseys, I actually will not be bidding unless there's some real good provenance. Like, I'm not buying this on a photo match alone. I need to know the chain of custody down to like the equipment manager, quite frankly, at 5 million plus. You actually want like notarized notes of transfer of possession. And look, I don't know the stories. I don't know if these are going to have those.
Yeah, I think on the Jordan one, it comes from Tim Hallam, who was the PR guy, who was the guy who had one of each of Jordan's shoes, that Dynasty collection. That's a pretty good, that's a pretty good note there. But
Well,
again, I
but
don't
again,
know if the chain is complete. In other words, I
right.
don't, it came from him originally.
Is he going to sign a notarized letter stating where it came from? And then is that person going to sign? I mean, like, look, we're not talking, we're talking beach house prices. When you're buying a beach house, like you don't have just one rinky dink local inspector come out. You're bringing out like the guy at the PhD or PhD in asphalt, and that's what these jerseys require. So like, look, of course they're going to be at big dog auction houses, but look, all the auction houses have different standards for their level of comfort. So I think you as a collector have to have your own level of comfort. And that's quite frankly why I've not, my oldest game used jersey is like, I guess it's the Jordan in 19. Oh, no, I guess I've got a Montana, but I'm selling the Montana. But like, like I'm like late 1990s. I don't have tons of comfort pre everything being documented. So like mid 1990s, I think things, you've got to have some provenance with photo match.
And photo match has obviously brought this market, right? The idea that a photo can match up and it has certain things, but we've had controversy. We had the whole My Gray fake photographer match that was just a match from the picture first. I'm sure that there's been situations that we know or don't know about someone pulling a thread and doing a reverse match so it matches the photo. But it seems like that stuff has evaded this market, at least at this point, where people are not so scared that they're not making bets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the leagues are also investing in this space. I mean, Major League Baseball was early on this, right? Like with their on-field authentication, where it went directly from the player or play a field to the on-site authenticator, many of whom were like retired FBI agents, right? So like, and then May Gray and Sotheby's have great processes in place for how they're documenting things. So yeah, photo match is very important. So I don't want to spook people off. Like if you're buying an MLB jersey within the last like 15 years, it has this hologram where you look it up to this website. Those are not being falsified. So
They even say when it was issued, if you can scan a hologram, and I know there was a Will Ferrell issue a couple years ago,
yeah,
right?
I
Where
was involved in that.
you
I
were
bought.
involved in that, right?
Yeah.
You bought it and then somehow it said issued or something like that, right?
Yeah, so the auction house didn't. This auction house that I bought it from just hadn't done the full research. They just trusted the consignor's word that it was game used, and ultimately had just been issued. So they simply just kind of checked the barcode, literally. So it wasn't that the authentication was wrong. The auction house just kind of was a little lazy and trusted the consigner. And of course, got full refund because I had full documentation that it was issued, not game used. So that's what's nice about the MLB program. But yeah, but also the other thing too, like, why I think this market's growing, a kind of a secondary reason why it's growing is storytelling, right? I mean, you've obviously done great in your career telling stories of this stuff, but like with my Jordan jersey, you might think the game was over, but the story goes on because a couple of things happened. The jersey wasn't marketed as Mother's Day. It also really didn't highlight the fact. I mean, look, we knew the game was in Charlotte, but Michael Jordan's mom was in attendance for the Mother's Day game. She was actually interviewed on ESPN Sports Center that night. And so the provenance and the story there kind of grows. And then, we have The Last Dance. And guess what? There's a piece of footage of the jersey in The Last Dance. Then the movie Air comes out, and the connectivity between Michael and his mom, that story really starts to grow. And guess what? This only in theater version, the only clip they showed of Michael Jordan in a Bulls jersey was this jersey. And they did it very intentionally, is my opinion. So look, the depth of research and the, kind of the story that gets built can actually add, tons of value.
We now have this situation where the equipment managers have to give things to Sotheby's per the deal. Players are allowed to buy their own jerseys and jersey swaps. You said players are buying their own things. Is it getting harder to get something that's great, right? Like you're not going to find 36 game used jersey that was in 36 games. It's like they pull it too fast. So is it going to get harder and harder to get something substantive?
I think that's a very real, potential issue. I mean, I think all of the finals jerseys, and firstly, on one hand, it was awesome that Sotheby's had so many finals jerseys so quickly after the finals, right? So like that aspect is pretty cool. That's sort of a new market that didn't previously exist. That being said, all the jerseys were halves. And so that hurts the significance of them to a very, very certain degree. You then do have the fact that a lot of the players are keeping a lot of the significant jerseys. So while I respect him as a player and think he's got great upside, even in all sorts of collectibles, I'm staying away from Patrick Mahomes jerseys because we have not seen many hit. And I just think that he's very savvy as a business person. And I think that Patrick Mahomes might have 50 Patrick Mahomes jerseys. And then what's the future of that? So that's one of the reasons I believe in Jordan. We know Jordan's opinion of this stuff. Jordan felt trophies and rings mattered. Everything else could go to fans and his teammates. So we know Jordan doesn't have a vault of this stuff. Tom Brady clearly did, and I bought something from his Sotheby's vault. I think Patrick's got a vault. I think Steph has a vault. I think Giannis has a vault. So, I mean, I think that it creates liquidity, but I think you got to be careful as that stuff trickles out.
How much do you think the Wemby to the kid to the father auctioning off the jersey that he had just got? The jersey was still there was still sweat coming off the jersey. When the ink was inked to consign it to the auction. Are there consequences of winning that lottery now that this was done? Either do players look around or everyone else and say, yeah, that's not going to happen much longer?
So I will say that Wemby is highly aware of the value of his items, so I do know I've got some insight that there were multiple negotiations amongst multiple parties, the team, France, his family, around basically everything that Wemby touches, kind of like the way LeBron is now. So I think that he knew that there was going to be a very real risk to that happening. And I think he just sort of accepts it. I think a lot of these guys accept the fact that they're worth dozens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And, that's just going to happen. I imagine that they probably get a little more perturbed when it's to a player who also makes millions of dollars. That might be like, okay, dude, that's a little low life. But look, I'm sure they don't love it, but I'm sure they definitely understand it.
Patrick Ryan, thanks so much for joining us on Collect TV to talk game used.
Happy to be here.